Um, and again, really great to have you, Safet.
Well, thank you, David, for the invite, and thank you everyone for joining in. It's always an honor. I feel such a honor to be part of Holocaust Memorial Day Trust now for many years, and also remembering Srebrenica, who does a lot of work, and they also jointly with HMD to continue educating people on genocide, and which we can see today. It's so important. We have to keep on teaching young people about it, making sure they understand not just what has happened and numbers and dates, etc. It's how these things start, how they develop, and what happens, and how people suffer through it. And even those that survive, there is still that happens behind our smiles. And you know, I've had comments sometimes online saying, you know, it's not as tough if you can smile. And when we have taken pictures, for example, for HMDT, for anything, it's always those kind of comments. You think some people are really insensitive, but it was troublesome time back in the 90s. Still now, we'll get to talk about what's happening right now as well. But I'll go back. I grew up in Bosnia, in Prijedor, northwest of Bosnia, which was part of Yugoslavia at the time. And we grew up as, well, and certainly my neighbors and most of my neighborhood, even though we knew the sort of difference of who was Muslim and Catholic, Orthodox, Christian in terms of the holidays, but that's as far as it went. We would wish each other holidays, visit each other for those occasions, celebrate together, you know, eat and drink. But that once, certainly with younger people, children, there was not at all ever an issue. I remember just at school, when you want to play football, you just want to play with the best footballer. You didn't think, oh, the name, I don't want to play with this person because he's Orthodox Christian. And at the time, certainly, we just saw, we would not Bosniaks and Bosnian Serbs and Bosnian Croats. It was Bosniaks are referred to Bosnian Muslims, and Bosnian Serbs are Orthodox Christians in Bosnia, and Catholics in Bosnia are Bosnian Croats. So just to kind of clear it up, and I was very happy. We weren't a rich family at all, but I was happy. I was content with what I had. Certainly, I had enjoyed being a child and young person and playing football whenever I got a chance. But what happened in the following the breakup of Yugoslavia? It all started from Tito's death in, obviously, 1980. And just to add, before I forget, 1984, Bosnia held Winter Olympics in Sarajevo. Therefore, just 8 years later, in Bosnia, we had concentration camps, which is really difficult for me to comprehend. But yeah. So as with all the turmoil and countries, Yugoslavia was made of 6 republics, and Bosnia was one of them. Each republic had its own parliament, and they couldn't agree anymore that what Milosevic wanted is more control, and other countries couldn't agree with that. And they decided to go independently. Slovenia, Croatia, the war broke out in Croatia. In Slovenia, only lasted about 10 days to 2 weeks. Very quick, not much effectively happened there. As the army pulled into Croatia, and the Serbian army occupied a big part of Croatia. And Bosnia was going towards independence. And eventually we had a referendum on 1st of March 92, and Bosnia voted overwhelmingly, even though it was boycotted by vast majority of Serbs, not all, but as we had some Serbs in the parliament, in the government still. Countries started recognizing Bosnia as an independent country and accepted it into UN, etc. However, the Serbian government obviously didn't like that, and they wanted to control over Bosnia. War broke out across Bosnia. And I remember watching, for example, war movies, and I used to watch movies about the World War II, and we always used to have so few main people who played so partisans and defeated Nazis, and we watched concentration camps, people being deported and killed, etc. All those stories, and you learned obviously from the history in terms of the numbers. But actually seeing soldiers walk through the streets, which I saw in June '92, I will actually just go back. Sorry. Following the independence in March, Serbian government called and they had this plan in '91. We found that through the Hague tribunals. This was all pre-planned, well before the independence declaration. And in Prijedor, there were groups of people who were given certain tasks as to who's going to do what and who, and they took over the local government and took over the police, and territorial army was disbanded. My dad was part of the territorial army at the time. There was no war. He didn't shoot a weapon. It was mixed territorial army because we had in Prijedor we had quite a lot of Serb Orthodox Christians as well as Catholics, Jews, Romans. It was quite a mixed town. Once they took over everything, effectively radio, and they started saying and with their propaganda, making up stories about doctors, whoever was a Muslim doctor that was well known, straight away they would just continue with the same propaganda, saying they did this to Serbian women to make sure they can't have children, etc., etc. And when you think about it, as to why would they do that, how could they do it? But this was all pre-planned, and as I said, in '91 they had secret meetings to rather encourage this party in Prijedor to set all this up and plan it. That's how you do this. If you want to create uneasiness towards your neighbors, you would know these things from Holocaust survivors, and obviously the stories that you would have heard about what was happening well before 1914 in Germany. You start creating stories and being demeaning to groups of people that you want others not to care about, or frighten them in thinking that I mean, if you talk about a particular doctor, for example, and you keep hearing story repeat again, and oh, he did this, he did that, eventually people are going to say when he disappears, they're going to think, oh, well, maybe he did do something bad. And that's exactly what they tried to create. And they started taking people away. Every now and then we'd hear someone disappeared, someone was taken away, doctors, officials, local government officials, police officers, etc. But then on 31st of May, '92, they issued a decree on radio, local radio, saying that all non-Serbs, non-Orthodox Christians must display a white flag on their house and must wear white armbands on their arm when out and about. And supposedly this was for their own safety. We know how that works. And again, I have to repeat when I say these things, this was Europe 1992. My dad did display a white flag on our house, and but that didn't stop. What happened next? A few days after, the soldiers, we heard shooting in other parts of Prijedor. We heard and saw with our own eyes bombing and burning of houses, etc., and just kept hearing all sorts of stories. One day, soldiers came into our streets and followed by armored vehicles and said, all the men come out. You'll be taken away. I mean, when I say all men, we knew what that meant. This meant, again, non-Serbs, non-Orthodox Christian, in my area, predominantly Muslims. And people started walking up the road, including my dad and my brother. I started walking as well. I was 16, so I was quite tall, and certainly the Serbian army wouldn't have turned me back. But my mum my mum raised her voice and said, "You get back your child." My mum was getting hysterical at this point. She kept saying, "We've got no weapons. What do you want from us?" and things like that. So I went back into the house, and I was lucky not to be picked up. So we were inside the house just hearing what's happening. We knew they were close by because we could hear the noise, and they were on the main road, but we couldn't go up there to see what's going on. Every now and then we'd hear shots, and you'd be thinking, what's happening up there? During that day, one of my neighbors was killed. He was only a few years older than me, and we only found out later that he was shot in the back. And apparently, it looks like one of his friends who used to work with him told him basically, "What are you doing here? Go home." And as he started walking, he shot him in the back. His dad didn't even know, because as there was loads of people up there, they weren't next to each other, so they didn't actually. His dad didn't know until much later what happened to his son. In fact, his son's body, as far as I'm aware, up to this day, it's only half where it has been found, as people are still digging bodies around Bosnia and finding them in different mass graves. On that day as well, my brother was hit by one of the soldiers 5 times in the head whilst they were waiting on that main road still, and he started bleeding. Another soldier, and that soldier walks away from him. Another soldier comes to my brother and says, "Come with me." And normally you think this soldier is going to finish him off, but actually this soldier took him to wash the blood off his head and brought him back to the group. My dad ended up being with a group of people who ended up speaking to one of the soldiers, and that soldier introduced himself and said he was from Serbia and that he had no choice. He wasn't given a choice. He was told that he has to take arms and join the army. Initially, he was told that they'll be preparing just to defend Serbia, but once he was mobilized, he was told he's going to Bosnia on the front line. And he said, "Look, I've got no choice. They've told me I will never work in Serbia again." And that certainly, it might sound like a far-fetched story from him, but we do believe it, because one of our friends, close family friends that we've known for years, my sister worked in the same factory. The director of that factory didn't want to take up the arms, didn't want to join the Serbian army, and he was told straight away not to come to work, and his wife, they were not allowed to come to work, and he was threatened, and even by his own friends who were Serbs. And they came actually to his home, and one of his friends came home to his home and collected the uniform and the gun, because they were provided this prior. And this soldier kept talking to my dad and a group of other people, as I said, neighbors, and said, "What's happened here? You know, was there any shooting?" My dad said, "Look, there was no shooting up to last night. We had groups of people walking through the streets, making sure nothing happens, joint kind of patrols, civilians, not with Serbs as well. So it was mixed. It wasn't just Muslims." And he said there was nothing happening in this area, and I don't know why this is happening now. So eventually they started calling people out, and my dad, because he used to be in territorial army previously, they had him on the list, so he was called up, and they started beating people up. And as they came to my dad, this soldier noticed, and this soldier from Serbia, who only met my dad that day, came forward and said, "Stop this. You do not need to beat people up. If you have a duty that you have to take these people away, then do it, but stop doing this." At that moment, commander also of the unit recognized another neighbor, and the beating stopped. So my dad, even though this soldier obviously was with part of a group that took him away, but he saved him. Who knows, if once they start to beat you up, you never know how it can end. So they were taken away. They were taken away to a local factory, what was pre-prepared for a concentration camp, and it was called Karaterm. So that was their first concentration camp. We were trying to find out what's happening. We had a few friends who were Serbs, and we were asking them to find out. So eventually we found out that some of the guards would allow food to be brought in. So women, like my sister, my older sister, would just take any food. Those that rode bicycles would get on bicycles and go and take food. And some of the guards would actually allow, for example, my brother would come to the gate and take the food, and he said, we're okay, don't worry. And he'd go away. But then some of the guards wouldn't allow that. They would threaten and say, "This is not a holiday camp, get lost." One of my neighbors, who was taking food to, I think, 5 of his sons in the camp, he was killed on the way. to there, and my sister and others were turned back by I think one of the soldiers saw him and said, "Just get back, someone's been killed." Eventually we found out that that's what happened. Few weeks after that, after being taken to Keratin concentration camp, my dad was taken to Omoska concentration camp. Now, once he was taken to Omoska concentration camp, and we heard that news, I felt that he was taken, someone's asked for him, and that usually meant if you're taken specifically, you're going to be tortured and you're going to be killed. We heard what was happening in Omoska, and my first thought was, that's it. I'm not going to see my dad again. And I remember locking myself in the bathroom and crying because I honestly thought that was it. Luckily, he did survive. He's been, again, I mean, it's you could say it's not, it doesn't feel right to say he's been lucky, but he survived. He was, few times he was called to this so-called White House in Omoska. And if you call there, you're called to be tortured. And for most people, that meant you got certain death. And he ended up even once in the house. Once he was called to the house, and another soldier told him, just get back to your group. And it's just, you always think that there's something, my dad is first to say not all soldiers were the same. Not all soldiers were beating people up, and some of them were keeping guard and being soldiers, but others did just use the opportunity to torture and kill. Many people died in those concentration camps. Whilst he was in Omoska concentration camp, there was an agreement for the British journalists to go there. So Penny Marshall, Ed Vulliamy, Ian Williamson, and this was ITN, Guardian, and Channel 4 in cooperation. They were given permission to go and film these concentration camps, because what the Serbian nationalist party, Serbs extremists, or it's kind of, don't want to say Serbs, because they do not and never did represent all Serbs, and not all Serbs were the same. So the Radovan Karadžic's party agreed to let these British journalists come and film the concentration camp. Although they said these are not concentration camps, these are camps for people who are afraid. So we've allowed them to come in, and we're keeping them safe. I thought that's not what my dad did, and that's not what my brother did, etc. But they did go, and I think it was August the 6th, 1992. The video can still be found on YouTube. So if you type in Ternopolje concentration camp, or if you type in Penny Marshall, Prijedor concentration camp, that will come up. And when you see that video, there is no hiding. This was barbed wire, soldiers walking around. These guys were already there for a while, losing weight. And I remember watching that video, and I recognized my brother. He was on a window of that school. And I was happy, obviously, to see him, but he was still in concentration camp. We had no idea what was going to happen. And however, when that video came out, I thought, these are British journalists. This is West now confirming what we've been already saying for months that's happening. So we thought something's got to happen now. The world will step in and stop the war and send people home. They will stop the concentration camps, etc. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And this was August 1992 when this video came out, and our stories were confirmed. But the war continued for further 3 years, and so many people died throughout those 3 years. What, however, did happen, and I strongly believe that is the only reason why the Serbian government agreed to release some people from concentration camps. So my dad was initially, just before the filming, he was sent from Omoska with majority of people from Omoska concentration camp. They were sent to Manjača concentration camp or elsewhere. So my dad was sent to his third concentration camp called Manjača just before the filming. So during the filming, you'll see in Omoska, for example, it just shows a handful of people, and they all had clothes on, and they were taking them to a canteen to eat, and then they were taking them back. And it didn't look too bad, let's say. But that's what they tried to portray. They couldn't hide in Ternopolje so much. And my dad was taken to Manjača concentration camp. But following this video, there was a bit of pressure from international community, and they agreed to release many prisoners. So my dad was released in November, end of November or beginning of December. I can't actually remember the exact date. In 1992, he was released to Croatia with an agreement that they will be taken to a third country. So the agreement between the Serbian government and international community was these people are not to stay in Croatia, and they're not to return to Bosnia. They have to leave to a third country. So the countries had to agree that they will take him on. So my dad was taken to England in December 92. After coming to England, he worked with Red Cross trying to get us out. My brother was released home. Again, he was following that video report. So eventually, my dad so many times got message to us that we got the papers sorted, and we'd sometimes be able to speak on the phone briefly. But if the local government kept refusing papers, and they didn't want to allow everyone to leave Prijedor. They wanted to have a safety there, so they needed to keep some Muslims, of course. But eventually, come December 1993, myself, and my older sister, it would have been in November, our papers would have been cleared. So they said that only two of us can leave, so me and my older sister. And whilst this was a really hard decision, but we felt there's not much choice. We have no idea what's going to happen. We have to try and leave even in parts, if at all possible. So we did agree to leave, and left my mum and younger sister. So on 2nd of December 93, I left Prijedor. We had to go to a center of town where Red Cross van came, and they provided papers to the locals, who then escorted us across many checkpoints towards Croatia. At this point, my brother was already in Croatia. He was working with the charity. He used to drive a truck, and when he was released home, he heard that some of the drivers are allowed to join this charity and that brings food from Zagreb to Prijedor. So they had an agreement with local police in Prijedor, who would actually provide security. They would go and bring food, and part of food would go to the Serbs, and then the rest of food was given to locals. So he joined up, and he did a number of convoys, and then eventually said this is becoming too dangerous because the army didn't like that agreement. The army that was on checkpoints, they were quite angry that there is Serbian police effectively allowing Muslims to travel around. That's how they saw it. And he thought it was getting too dangerous, and he said, look, next convoy, I want to stay in Zagreb. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's become really dangerous. We said, look, next convoy, you just stay in Zagreb, and that's what he did. So once we left on 2nd of December, me and my older sister, and it was the last time that I saw my grandma, my mum's mum. And she came to see us away. So we went through a number of checkpoints, and I remember, obviously, I was 17 at this point, and I was every time we'd come to a checkpoint, we'd all have to come out to the van. They would check our luggage. They didn't allow photos to be taken or anything that would kind of effectively keep your memory. They kept looking. Soldiers kept looking at me, and obviously they didn't like the idea that I'm free. But we all got through okay, and we got to Croatia. And even though I knew of issues in other parts of Bosnia between the Croatian army, that was also invading Bosnia and trying to divide it, I felt safe. For some reason, I felt I'm safe now. And we eventually got taken to Zagreb, and my brother met us, and we just stayed mostly crying and talking throughout the night. In the morning, I was taken on a plane with my sister, and went up. I left Zagreb with lots of snow. It was really a lot of snow, I remember, and going a plane up in the air, and eventually we were above England, and once the plane started coming down, so I was looking for the snow, couldn't see any, it was all green. We got to the airport. I was looking for my dad straight away as he came out to the plane, and there was loads of people running towards their friends, hugging, etc. Me and my older sister, we kept looking around and couldn't see my dad. And eventually, one of the men there, he came towards us and said, "Are you Safet and Vahida?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't worry, your dad couldn't come with us, but you'll get with us on a coach, and we'll get you to him. Don't worry." So we got on this coach, and it was a long ride, and it was Stansted Airport, and eventually we got to Balham, and we got off the bus. Saw my dad, and we just couldn't talk for a long time. You're happy that we see him finally, but we still have got my mum and my younger sister back in Prijedor, and we just hoped that eventually they would allow them to leave. They were allowed to leave in June '94, sorry, they were allowed to leave in June '94, and they came here. So we were all reunited, but we had lots of family still there, and we kept watching the news, and the war kept raging on, and you just could not understand that this is Europe and it's '90s, and we're still seeing concentration camp killing of innocent people. Two countries trying to arrange division of another country and to destroy. Bosnia was to disappear. Bosnian Muslims were to disappear. That was the plan by Serbia and Croatia. And finally, come 1995, which really, there was so much time to prevent it, and it was really inevitable that something like Srebrenica was going to happen. UN set up 6 or could be 7, might be 7, sorry, safe areas, safe havens, as they were called. Not a single one was defended properly by the UN. They either defended themselves in the end, or they fell like Srebrenica did. And many of you would have heard about Srebrenica, and anytime you hear it, it's still, again, for me, always hurts me, because I know what's still happening today. Srebrenica, like Prijedor, is in Republika Srpska. And just over a few days, in July 1995, over 10,000 people were killed in Srebrenica, specifically area, over 8,000. There were many people that came from other parts around Srebrenica. They came into Srebrenica because they thought UN would keep them safe. And unfortunately, UN stood aside, and this is all recorded, and it's awful to see even UN soldiers dancing. I mean, they say they were pressurized, etc. They were dancing. The general was drinking with Ratko Mladic, and Ratko Mladic made all the promises that, you know, they're going to keep everyone safe. Yet before that, they filmed Ratko Mladic saying, "We're going to pay back the Turks," and this was all used to get young soldiers angry, talking about paying back the Turks. They were killing Bosnian Muslims. They weren't killing Turks, but that's how they used that 500-600 story from years ago, 600 years ago story to incite hatred towards a group of people. Most people know where Turkey is, but they certainly wouldn't attack Turkey. In Srebrenica, over a few days, they kept chasing people who were trying to run away through the woods and killing whoever they found. It was mostly men, but there was also women who were taken away and tortured, raped, and there was a number of mass graves. I mentioned it at the start. There's people who are still looking for their loved ones. I've met mothers from Srebrenica who often, many of them said, "My son was your age," and it really kind of hurts you. And it also encourages me more, empowers me more to do this and talk about it, because many of them won't get a chance. Many of them haven't got a chance, and I feel we have a duty, those that survive, and this certainly applies to Holocaust survivors as well as survivors of other genocides. We have to keep this story alive. We have to keep telling this story, because this shouldn't be happening to anyone. Holocaust Memorial Day Trust event. I don't know if you have all had the pleasure of watching it. It was emotional again, but it was for me personally. It's one story. I think could be because my daughter's name is Hannah, but Hannah Lewis stories always really affects me, because when I see Hannah Lewis talking now, I don't see Hannah Lewis as she is now. I see a young girl looking through the window, watching her mother being shot just because she's Jewish. And this is what was happening in Bosnia just because we were Muslims. If you remove Muslims from Bosnia, Bosnia disappears. That was the aim of genocide. And following Srebrenica, I believe that the reason for the action was Srebrenica and how many people were killed in such a short period of time, not necessarily how many people were killed. I believe if Serbian army played it differently and killed same number of people over a longer period of time, the world would still be doing nothing. We've had judgments given, and they were found, Ratko Mladic and Radovan Karadzic were found guilty of genocide in Srebrenica, but not of genocide in other parts. And if you look at, I mean, I'm not a lawyer as such, so I don't have that legal background. But for me, what I have seen, they've effectively changed the definition of genocide. And for Priedo, it's because not a significant number of people were killed. Where in definition does it show the number of people having to be killed for it to be a genocide? The plan was there in 91, and they tried to execute it. Luckily, partly because of British journalists, partly because of our neighbors who didn't want to kill. Some of the neighbors were part of the army, but they didn't want to go and kill around innocent people. You will hear many stories where it says neighbor was killing neighbors. Absolutely true. Across Bosnia, there were, but not all. In fact, in Sarajevo, first general, one of the first people to stand up for Bosnia and fight against those who tried to occupy it and destroy it was a Serb. When I say Serb, from Serbia, he was born in Serbia. He was working in Sarajevo in the army, and he ended up standing alongside other Sarajevo's people and defending the Sarajevo. And this is another reason why I heard during the reporting during the war, most of the reporting and all the politicians, Western politicians specifically, were always saying, "Oh, this is between Muslims and Croats and Serbs." They were not acknowledging Bosnian army as Bosnian army because it was Bosnian. We had Bosnian parliament still that was made of different religion. We had Bosnian army that was, as I said, we had general was a Serb. Obviously, there were soldiers as well, but I'm just talking about general specifically. There was also someone who in Sarajevo was captain, was a Serb, captain of the police, commander, sorry, of the local police. He was chasing snipers, Serbian snipers who were placed around Sarajevo. But during the war, they wanted to just say this is between three religions. We're not really sure what to do. It's looking for an excuse, making a religion an issue when really the religion isn't the cause of it. The religion is used wrongly to satisfy someone else's needs. And unfortunately, we still have this today. War, as I said, there was action following Srebrenica, shortly after Srebrenica. And Dayton Peace Agreement was signed. Unfortunately, that Dayton Peace Agreement was signed to suit effectively those that tried to divide the country and ordered camps, etc., because they were allowed to stay in power. And we still have those that were running concentration camps. They're still in government, and they're paid by from Bosnian budget, and they still talk about dividing Bosnia. They still don't recognize Bosnia as an independent country. They still deny genocide. They still want to divide it. They still want to join Serbia, and there's still parts of those Croatian Catholic nationalists who want to divide Bosnia and join up with Croatia. So we're still fighting. Genocide hasn't stopped. The genocide has not finished for those that wanted to finish it. Many believe that there would be no support and that they would manage to destroy Bosnians, Muslims, and therefore Bosnia itself. But Bosnia has been in existence for over 10 centuries. And I think that's an important fact to raise. Ruled by many rulers and different religions, etc., and that's what makes it beautiful. Anyone who's had opportunity and anyone who will have opportunity, go and but try and ignore the politics of it. Try and ignore that part of division. I mean, if you meet people really wherever you go around Bosnia, whether you meet Serbian families, Catholic families, Jewish families, which we don't have many of, unfortunately, because the wars have played their part in reducing the Jewish population that's been there since 1400s, if I believe. But it is a beautiful country with beautiful people, but they're not allowed. And certainly the way the political system is now in Bosnia, because of the Dayton Peace Accord, people are almost made to live separately, to do things separately. And you know, if you're a Muslim, you can't be a president of Republika Srpska, and it has to be a Serb, and that Serb will not recognize Bosnia as an independent country. And it's very difficult to see how West thought this would work in Bosnia. That's still so mixed in terms of the religion. We still, if you go to Sarajevo, any big city, especially in Federation side, which is predominantly Muslim, you will see mixed people living together, working together, partying together, celebrating together. But there's still people who don't like to see that. And there's still people who, certainly President of Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik, he still raises the issue of Muslims because he knows that brings fear still in some people, certainly in Europe. And he still keeps saying, you know, these are Muslims and you don't want to have Muslim country in Europe and things like that. It's the fact that he's allowed to get away and get paid as part president of Bosnia. It's something I cannot understand. I mean, I've always said it might be inappropriate, but I have compared it to World War II having been finished, and then Nazis allowed to run occupied Europe, and Nazi party to do and say whatever they like, and just take Hitler and a few other top officials away and put them in prison, and still allow that same party to run occupied Europe where it was. Bosnia, I still call it halfway, it's still occupied. The other half isn't great either, because there's still Croatian nationalists there who would like to take part of Bosnia into Croatia. Croatia, unfortunately, that's part of the European Union, pretty much openly supports it. They're not against it. They've also been saying the law that's been brought in recently by the European representative, they saying, you know, that's wrong, that's creating uneasiness in the region. But you know, that genocide happened. International courts have proved that. Why is that wrong? And considering the fact that we still have today, we're talking about the deniers of Holocaust, I'm not surprised there are deniers of Bosnian genocide, and there will be for many years. We just have to continue to fight it. And I think I'll stop there. I hope there's some questions if people wish to ask, feel free. But I'll take a stop there.
Safet, thank you. I mean, wow, there's so much there. Firstly, you speak really well, and that's just so important to have someone like you to be able to express so much in terms of your own childhoods and the emotional reactions and what identity was, and of course all the issues today. Gosh, there's so much there. I just want to thank you for that. That's amazing. And you know, yeah, this is also a chance if you want. Let me just remove the spotlight for a second and go together. Please do come in if you'd like to ask a question to Safet now. Please do unmute yourself, put your real hand up like this if you want. You don't have to put your virtual one up, but you know, this is a good opportunity just to ask anything you would like. Please don't be polite. No? Can't believe it. No? Really? You mean I've got to ask the questions? Is that what you want? I mean,
there is a hand, Marilyn. Marilyn's got a hand.
So hold on, Marilyn. Yeah, come in, Marilyn.
Are all your family here now? You said
Yes.
You didn't see your grandmother.
Yes, my grandmother died shortly after I left Prijedor. But my parents are all alive still, and my brother and my two sisters, we all live here and we have family here.
As you said, your brother was shot in the head.
No, he was hit in the head.
Hit.
He was beaten.
Hit.
Yeah.
Beaten, sorry. Yes.
Thank you for that.
Unbelievable after, you know, what, 45 years after what happened in Germany. It's unbelievable.
But that's it. There's so many. Obviously, it's different, but it's also there's so many similarities. If you look at the concentration camps, people being taken away, walking up the road, simply because of their religion or their identity. And then if you think of white armbands, obviously it's not yellow star, it's white armbands. But that is, you can't not connect it to yellow star. To have it in the 90s in middle of Europe again is something I mean I talk about it. I've been talking about it over the years, but every time I talk about it, I still just cannot understand how that could have been allowed. And the reason, and I've been lucky enough to meet survivors from Darfur and Rwanda and Cambodia, etc. I always feel kind of I try and explain to them when I emphasize it's the fact that it was in Europe, and I don't mean at all any disrespect or to any other country that has suffered. But the reason why I say Europe is the fact that if we can allow it to happen in Europe again, where obviously there was all the evidence was there, it was so close, the action could have been taken easier. If it can happen there, then of course we should not act surprised for the fact that it's happening elsewhere.
I think also, I don't know if anyone else, I think it makes me worry now also about the situation in Ukraine. Because that's also a situation where there are, because I suppose in some ways, part of the issue is that Britain and America, maybe I suppose at least, and maybe other Central European countries, I don't think really understood the depth of enmity that was unveiled in Bosnia. So it's easy to put that sticking plaster over it and create a federation, and Serbs will just go there and Bosnians will go there, and actually, not really understand actually that we can wash our, that's my time switch has gone off. I'm still here, don't worry. We can wash our hands of the conflict, but actually it's stored up for another day in a way. And that's what worries me. And Russia and Ukraine, but we can come back to that. But I see Arthur, you've got your hand up. Arthur Harvard.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for that fascinating presentation. Can I ask, once all your family had arrived in England, what sort of assistance did you get, if any, from British authorities or from the international community to help you settle? And how difficult has it been to settle in England?
I'd say that obviously I can talk about what happened to me, but that answer would be different for different Bosnian families. Some were lucky in getting support, some were not. When I arrived, I was 17 and a half, and I wanted to see straight away if I can continue education. And the organization that was set up to help Bosnian refugees, I was told that I'm too old, and because I don't speak English, I can't continue regular education. The only thing I can do is go and learn English. And I thought, okay, that's fine. So I arrived here in December, and I was going to start in January, just sort of two nights, evening lessons of English lessons. However, there was a family from another part of Bosnia, from a city called Zenica, and they met my dad previously. So when they heard I was here and my sister, they came to see us and we're talking about it. And their families, there were a few young people who I met and spoke to them. We became friends straight away. And their auntie came to see us as well. And she said, "Oh, you're going back to school?" And I said, "No, apparently I'm too old. And because my English isn't great, I can't." She said, "What?" So she actually went to the organization and said, "Look, if you're not going to get him to college, let me do that." And I said, "Sure." So actually, I was helped by another Bosnian family to get into college, and I went to, they took me for an interview to Brooklands College in Weybridge. And I honestly, I will always remember Brooklands College in Weybridge. They had some wonderful people there who helped me. And even though my English was really, really not great, because I never learned English beforehand, I learned German, and I actually realized I spoke more English than German for some reason. Yeah, I had an interview, I think it was sort of end of January. In February, straight away, they accepted me to come and do part-time course till end of the year. And they allowed me to do a full-time course after that. They gave me some sort of extra hours of help and all the support. And so, yeah, I've been, again, lucky enough to come across people, individuals, rather than actually being supported by an agency. Whereas other families, I'd have different sort of experiences, and certainly this organization that was set up did help many families. So I don't want to take that away from them. But in my case, yeah, I ended up being lucky to have some friends who helped me out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Fascinating.
Thank you for questions.
Fascinating to hear as well, Safet. Any other questions? Please do.
I was going to mention, David, if I can, whilst others are thinking about questions, perhaps. You mentioned Ukraine, and it is awful, but it's also what, if you see that what happened initially with Crimea region, and what happened after that? Nothing. So if you see that there is no consequence to your actions, if you're that kind of person, you're going to continue pushing it. That's exactly it. If you look at what happened in Bosnia, the Serbs extremists were effectively allowed to keep the occupied part. The world allowed them. UN didn't do much to stop the war throughout 3.5 years. I was saying back in the 90s, and along many people who protested in London and across the country, UN is useless. And I feel it was useless then, and it's useless today, because we can see it is not doing much. I've never liked the idea of Eastern and Western Bloc. I personally don't like the idea of NATO, because that implies West. And that straight away implies Russia's on the East. Now, I'm not against NATO, because there should be something to contra Russia, let's say. But I don't like the idea because it gives ammunition to Russia. And I've never liked the idea of East and West division. I think we have to have functioning UN. And I would much rather have a UN and countries committing forces to UN, and wherever there is a need, the UN can go. Whichever country wants to be part of the UN, they must allow UN to come in and inspect anything that happens in their country. But unfortunately, we're a long way from that. People have vetoes, and we know during the Bosnian War there was hundreds of peace conferences with nothing happening at the end, because another country puts a veto on it, and arrange another conference whilst people are getting killed, etc. So I would much rather see a functioning UN, proper UN that works for everyone in the world, than have NATO and these different blocks.
Yeah, I seem to remember some English politicians making their name over the peace negotiations over Bosnia. I think it was David Owen, I think was a big people, if I remember when I was young.
Yeah, I don't often go into names, but yeah, I mean, certainly we were so angry, and I always try and make a point when I say we were so angry about British government's lack of their will to do anything to stop it. They were more interested in how to divide it. They were working on different maps. There were so many maps of how to divide Bosnia than to how to stop the war. And that hurts. However, I also want to point out that Britain is one of the countries that's been so supportive, certainly over the last few years, politically as well as financially, and running different projects in Bosnia and supporting Bosnia in many ways, and certainly supported Potocari, building of the memorial. And so absolutely grateful. But obviously, I always do raise the point, what happened then should not have happened. There should have been support for those people that needed it. And at the end of the day, the war should have been stopped. And then you could negotiate. You never stop diplomacy, but stop the war first. And I remember when Syria conflict started, I thought, okay, this is just going to be peace conference after peace conference, or conference after conference, because what was happening at the beginning, there were two sides. One was saying President Assad he's committed genocide. The other side was saying, no, he's not committing genocide. Who's guilty? He's not guilty. He's good side, or he's on a bad side. It doesn't matter. First, stop the war, then have those negotiations. But they couldn't, and I knew they weren't going to do anything. And you end up having war that goes on and on and on, and you end up having military involvement later, which costs more money than actually stopping the war. If war in Bosnia was stopped in 1992 straight away in the first when it first started, it would have costed a lot less money. First of all, it would have had less lives lost, less hatred created, and there would be less refugees following that, and people wouldn't be complaining about refugees going to other countries, etc. So I certainly had no plans to leave Prijedor. I was happy in Prijedor and would probably be living there. But I am, of course, happy to see you all online here.
Yeah, of course. I see, Melinda, you've got your hand up. I think you're muted, sir. It's all right.
Thanks, Bernard. Thank you very much for that talk with so many parallels in it, as you say. Forgive me if you've said this at the beginning because I was late to your talk, but have you been back to your home area in the last 20 years? And if so, in what capacity, and what sort of emotions arose for you if you did go back?
Yes, we have been back. We managed to get our house back. We had the Serbian family that was living there, but we did manage to get it back and rebuilt it. And I'm happy, always happy to go there because I also see my old neighbors, etc. But it is always emotional. It was always hurtful because when you're coming in, the first signs that you see when you come in Bosnia is "Welcome to Republika Srpska." We have towns that had Bosnian prefix in their name, and that was removed. If it was in Serbian part, it was removed. So, for example, one of the first towns that I would come in when if I drive in, go through Bosanski Novi, and because he had Bosanski as in Bosnian, it was removed and it was given. It's called Novigrad or Bosanska Kostajnica. So anything that indicated Bosnia in it, they removed it, and it hurts. It's always difficult, but you keep having hope. You keep thinking they're gonna see this division isn't working. This isn't democracy. If you're dividing things on religion, I can't call that a democracy. You know, we have 3 presidents and they're chosen by religion. So that means all these smaller groups haven't got a voice, which is just not right. And there is no progress in that sense. And I can't see it progressing until they decide to change it. We have now a person that's representing, I hate talking about these things in terms of the religion, but I have to say it because that's how it is, who's representing Catholic Bosnian Croats. He's actually pro-Bosnian. He's a Bosnian Croat, he's Catholic, but he was in Bosnian army and he was fighting for Bosnia and he wants to see Bosnia united. And I would now vote for him as one president for all. But there's not many people like him, and he's not supported enough to push that idea. You know, there are groups and there are some people that are trying to do that, but there's just not enough support from international community because it's too complex for them. And they keep saying we want 3 sides to agree, but they talking to the nationalist parties that have done it all, and you're asking them to agree to something they clearly say they won't agree. You know, they still want, those nationalists still want to divide Bosnia, and they openly say it. So it's very, very difficult whenever I go, emotional, but obviously still love going there, and food and everything.
I must say, Melinda, actually, one thing that I wanted to do a few years ago was to do a trip for synagogue to Bosnia. I would still like to do it. Obviously, COVID just slightly put that into abeyance. But, we've done, Safet, a number of trips to Poland to look at Holocaust, Jewish Holocaust sites, and people will often go to Auschwitz, which is near Krakow, or Krakow has a beautiful town, I must say. But there's a lot to see there in terms of what happened in the Holocaust and the Second World War. I went on a trip to Bosnia myself with a group of imams and rabbis, and we went to, as I said to Safet before the talk, I went to Poticari, which is this the place where this Dutch battalion was, which was meant to be a protection area for those who flooded in, and the Dutch bat ended up caving in and giving people over to Mladic's forces, and the rest is history. So Srebrenica, Poticari, there a very honorable cemetery in Poticari, which you can look online and you'll see the picture of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of white tombstones, all I think identical if I remember, but all representing the burials of new people. And what happened was that after the Srebrenica genocidal episode, often what Serbian forces would do would be to go back to mass graves and then plow again the bones and bodies so that they will be split. So you will find a leg somewhere or a bone of somewhere else. It's very hard. You will never find a body. And there is a place in Tuzla in Bosnia which looks to the identification. And every year, I think it's July the 11th, I think it is.
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow, I remember that well. On July the 11th, every year, more bodies or more remains are buried. So families will be asked, will you be happy that we have enough of the body to bury, rather than waiting? I know this sounds terrible, but this is the reality, waiting for more to be found. And they will say, okay, we want the closure, and there'll be some more burials. And that site then grows in Poticari, and it's a beautiful place, actually. In a way, it's horrible, but it's very well put. And there's an amazing museum where you'll see the pictures of the Dutch soldiers who left Poticari to go to Zagreb, dancing at the fact that they had left the scene and they weren't there anymore. And it's horrific. I think one thought I also have, Safet, is this, I don't know how to put it. Later in the year, in May, there is a Jewish day called the Holocaust Memorial Day. And therefore, some ways I found in Holocaust Memorial Day here today, which is actually to commemorate the days chosen because it was a day of the liberation of Auschwitz death camp. But there is a sense of less loneliness as a Jewish person. I mean, look, hey, we would rather that the genocides would have stopped with the genocides in the Second World War. But they didn't, and this is 2022. And so to be able to be with you, Safet, just like to be with someone who came from Cambodia or from Darfur or from someone from Rwanda, it just feels a bit less lonely, actually, as a weird way, as a Jewish person, that we can talk together about experiences and that we have gone through, the yellow star, the white flag, the roundups, and we together, I suppose, would share that sense of it, obviously not wanting to happen again, and why we understand together why these things happen and worry about them happening again in our world when we look at Ukraine and other places. So yeah, it's been really. Any other questions that you've been thinking of? Yeah, Eileen. Unmute, Eileen. I think you're still muted. Super.
Can I just say thank you very much for your talk, and thank you very much for talking about what you're talking about. I missed you in the beginning and I listened on my phone, but I'm now part of the group now. And I don't know if I missed at the beginning, what actually is your current job and your education? Because you've obviously got such an overview of everything that's going on, and such an understanding of what's going on. And I frankly don't understand it, because between the three countries, if you don't know the real history, it's very difficult to follow the thread of it all. So I think the fact that you're talking and prepared to go on talking is amazing. But what do you do when you're not talking about this?
That's brilliant.
One of the best questions. Well, thank you first of all. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for the question, of course. My college was electrical engineering, My degree was in computing and information systems.
Mhm.
I ended up working for 10 years with victim support, so dealing with victims of crime. And then I ended up getting involved in accounts, which was going to be temporarily, but after how many, 6-7 years now, I'm still in it. I'm a credit controller for a company that does specialist cleaning. So nothing in the sense with, you know, political or legal side, no. But I guess when I'm talking, I'm only talking from experience and what I've learned. And certainly I've learned a lot from Holocaust survivors. I mean, I've had an honor of meeting many of them who were, of course, children themselves at the time. And, you know, I've gained a lot of experience in that sense. But I was there before the war. I was there for partly during it. And so I wouldn't say, you know, there are much more experienced people than me, and you would probably get a lot more out of other people in certain subjects, because I've not really studied it, and having 2 young girls and family and bills, and, you know, I have to concentrate on certain other things, my day-to-day job. But I have always felt such an honor being part of any event that talks about genocide and hope, certainly. And I had to add the other day in an event, I said my hope is in young people, and then I added, as the conversation went on, we have hope that our current politicians will do something about certain things, but I do have great hope in younger people, that there's so much good work happening around the country in schools and you know, various youth projects that are teaching young people about genocide, about the horrors, and I am hoping that when they come to the point of making decisions and being government, being local leaders, that they will act before things get worse, because that's the most important thing. It's so much easier, and I've always compared this to a simple fight. I used to be the kid that would just jump in between 2 guys that are about to fight, because I didn't want fighting. If you don't like each other, don't want to play with each other, just go away, because it's much easier. Once they start hitting each other, it was always harder to get involved, because you get hit by mistake, you know, accidentally. But that to me applies to every conflict. The sooner you go in, there is less hatred between each other, because there is less hurt between the groups. But if you let it go on and on and on, it's going to get worse, it's going to get harder, and it's going to be more difficult to stop things. And unfortunately, I've seen it with my own eyes from my life, that people look for excuses not to do anything. And it's so easy, but you also have to then admit to yourself, by not doing anything, you are doing, and you are siding with those that are committing crimes, unfortunately. So as I said, my job is nothing to do with genocide education, but I am proud to be doing work in that. And certainly my work's been supportive. They've been, you know, allow me time off during the days when I've had events and such. I do try and make up for it, so I'm not trying to abuse it. But yeah, they're very supportive of what I do as well.
Well, and I think that was a great question. I think we'd love to have you in the synagogue. We'd definitely in person. We have to get you up. And I think in some ways we're lucky in Britain, because we live in a civic nation, a civic democracy. So it's not really a country based on an ethnic group. In some ways you become British, and whichever religion or group you are, right? And ideally we should all believe you're British, and you're part of that, and you vote, and you're part of a democracy. In some ways, therefore, we find it hard to understand what you would call as an ethnic democracy, a nation defined by an ethnic group, right? And that's when it gets complicated, because then you've got in Bosnia a country where there's this competition between different ethnic groups. But actually, if we look at and learn about what happened in Bosnia, a bit of its history and how it was attempted to be solved, actually it isn't a million miles from a lot of us in our desire for there to be a solution between Israel and the Palestinians. Because you've also got then different ethnic claims to a piece of land, to statehood. And then we can think through what are the sort of solutions that would be very disastrous, what the sort of solutions that might work, which respect the peoples that live there, all the peoples that live there. So, you know, what maybe be different about the Holocaust, I suppose, the Second World War, maybe a little, is that, you know, Jewish people in Germany didn't really have any designs on government in Germany. They just wanted to live their life as part of German society. And they were weak in their own way, and Germany became powerful in Europe and used that power. And there was an absolute power asymmetry. Whereas, and there were power asymmetries in Bosnia in some ways, but there was also a fight as to, I suppose, how a country will be defined. And it was Bosnia. I went to Caesarea in Israel once, Safet. Caesarea is in the north of Israel. And I remember going, you can see the Roman sort of, you know, ruins there, and there's an amphitheater. And I went there and there was a mosque, and I looked at the maps of this place. It was a Bosnian mosque in the 1100s, from Bosnian refugees to the Holy Land.
Wow.
Absolutely fascinating. I was like, that is cool. You know, it's like Bosnians, they go back, you know, they go back a long way. There you are.
Can I tell you a funny story? Or do you want to finish your thought and I'll...
No, I'm finished. We should probably finish-ish soon, although I think we're all enjoying being here, but please tell us your story. That would be great.
You might make, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced, us Bosnians, we do like to joke a lot. So there is something that's been dug up for years in Bosnia, in central Bosnia, and there are those archaeologists or wherever they're stating that they're old pyramids and much older than those Egyptian ones that you've learned about, and they're trying to kind of prove it, and there's other people saying no, it can't be, etc., etc. But what happened following those stories and those discoveries, you know, there are certainly certain things that point. I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't be able to tell either way. But one of the things that we said is, once that came out, we said, who are the Egyptians? They're refugees from Bosnia. Obviously, our pyramid being older.
Ours are older than yours. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it is, the thing is that there is so much beauty in the world. And one thing I was the other day, I can't remember who I was speaking with, but he came up in a conversation, and I said, just think, if you take away the war and the issues between the sides in Palestine and Israel, if you asked majority of people in the world where they would like to go and visit, those are the two Palestine and Israel. They're beautiful places that people would want to visit anyway. You know, and it's such a shame that, you know, this cannot be resolved. And but it comes down to power. It's power and control. You know, if you look at, I mean, why were the Germans afraid of Jews? Jews weren't causing trouble. It's the fact that they were afraid of the influence. They're working, as you said, working and just getting on with their life. They were not interested in politics. Predominantly Bosnia, it wasn't for Muslims, it was quite rare that they wanted to become a politicians. You know, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but certainly in my area, kind of we didn't know many people that wanted to go that way. It was just, you just interested in getting a job, you know, ordinary job, living your life, not interested in, you know, being part of this party or that party. It just wasn't. Certainly my dad wasn't. My dad joined the local sort of local council, which helps people, you know, getting the lighting and in the areas, getting the roads done and things like that. Not interested in being part of this party or that party, or being in government, etc. You know, not interested in that kind of power. But when you get wrong people, they're interested in power. They will use religion. It's so easy to use as a tool, as we know it. I mean, you've talked about this country, you know, being civil and etc. And we all see ourselves as British citizens. Absolutely, I'm proud of being British citizen and contributing to the society. But you can also see that every now and then you have certain politicians that come out and starting using religion side to say we're a Christian country. And, you know, I'm going to say, why does being predominantly Christian, why do you say this? Surely you're a democracy. As a president of a party, where you shouldn't be. Religion to me is your personal thing. That shouldn't affect me working with you. And how am I going to be, if I'm voting on things? Religion has nothing to do with, you know, are you going to raise taxes or etc. So why bring it into it? It sometimes puzzles me. So I think it's always, people are so ready to use religion, and unfortunately others fall into it easy because of that.
I think, yeah.
So religion, I will never accept that war in Bosnia was because of religion. I will always say religion was used as a tool, because if you remove Bosnian Muslims, you've removed Bosnia, because that's the biggest group in Bosnia, and it's so easy then to divide it between Croatia and Serbia. So that's why, because they wanted to divide Bosnia.
It's crazy. I know. There's so much I remember from there. Well, listen, we could go on, but it's been great, Safet. No, but it's been really, this is big stuff. This really is big stuff. There's so much irrational fear
I
of
forgot to ask. I won't keep you on for too long. Have you managed to establish any link when you were in Bosnia with the Jewish any Jewish groups or Jewish people? No.
Not with people. So yeah, we went to the synagogue in Sarajevo. There is a synagogue there in Sarajevo, which goes back a long time. And there was a guy, the head of the Jewish community in Sarajevo, and I've forgotten his name, Yosef, I've forgotten his name, who was actually, he was a candidate for president of Bosnia, I think, at some point. I looked up, and I got in touch with him before, but he couldn't meet us. He wasn't there or something. So we didn't really have time to meet the Jewish community. But we learned a lot. And actually, if I remember, sniping by Serbians into Sarajevo actually happened from a Jewish cemetery. So there is a Jewish cemetery high up on a hill, because, Sarajevo is a valley. It's quite low. They were quite hilly on the sides. And on one side, we went to the Jewish cemetery there, and I was interpreting the Hebrew. And it was actually where there were holes in stones, because that was also where sniping had happened into Sarajevo, or one of the places, which was quite incredible to see that. But yeah, the Jewish community has had a very positive part to play in society, and that was really pleased to see. So
they have suffered over the years. I was just read last week on Monday, was a lady that passed away, and she didn't want to leave Sarajevo during the siege, but she also was, I believe she might have been also, she survived Auschwitz as well.
Oh, wow.
It is one of the I believe big camps that she survived, and also survived the siege of Sarajevo. So it was quite
wow.
sad.
Wow, wow. Well, it'd be lovely to be in touch with you. I will keep in touch, definitely, because it'd be great to see you in person as well, but certainly keep in touch. And I don't know if everyone wants to unmute and give a nice clap or thank you, because Safet, that's been really super. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for joining in.
Have a great evening. Good luck with work, and keep talking, Safet, because you do it really well.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to see you all. Best wishes to everyone.
Attractive person, isn't he?
Keep well, everyone. Bye. Bye, Aaron.
Bye.
Bye, Jacob. See everyone. Have a good night. Keep well.
Absolutely.